In urban Oklahoma, charter schools have become the option. Charter schools, and I remember when that passed out of the legislature, it had a hard time because the rural dominants did not want charter schools, because in some of these smaller districts there was not enough money to split with a charter school. Suddenly, if you split just a small budget for a district with 100 kids, suddenly there's not enough for an administrator and for your staff. So you're going out of business if you have a charter school in some of these rural areas. Fought it. And with the rural element hanging on into the 90s, they were able to hold back, but by the late 90s, they were losing that ability to fight back, so here come charter schools. Adding to what was already there with the socio-economic group that was largely urban, which is the private schools, that really spring out of nowhere in the 1960s and 70s with white flight out of the city schools. The schools you and I grew up in suddenly started losing the students because of families were moving out of the cities, moving to suburbs. Private schools come out of that. Then you get charter schools. Well, in the urban districts, for a while, you could absorb all three, the private, the charter, the public. But you can see the result on the public schools of Oklahoma City and Tulsa. Well, here we've adapted and it's changed and it's affected the rest because there was enough to share. In rural areas, there's not. And so they have been fighting this. One reason the legislature right now keeps bringing it up is that you have the dominant urban element setting the agenda and driving the energy and saying, yes, we need to consider vouchers so anybody can go anywhere they want. Well, rural Oklahomans realize if that's the case and another little school pops up in my little town, suddenly where's the money to support public education? The gap between those who have most of the resources and those with less, that is urban-rural, because most of the mercantile business elite who have the ability to generate a lot of wealth are in the urban areas. And of course that's driving this migration from small towns into the cities. And in a lot of these small towns where they will graduate 15 to 25 seniors, you know, maybe one or two of those kids say, yes, I'm going to stay in my little town. The others are saying, no, I'm going to Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Dallas, is still a draw, or Denver. For example, with the Oklahoma Historical Society, almost all of my museums outside of this history center are rural Oklahoma. Well, they'll tell me, well, yes, we're going to cut your budget another 13%. Go out and raise the rest of the money. Well, Oklahoma City and Tulsa, we can raise money for exhibits. We just raised $1.6 million for an exhibit on the history of free enterprise. Before that, raised $1 million for a history of oil and gas. Before that, raised money for an exhibit on civil rights. We can do that in Oklahoma City, and in Tulsa we're raising money for the OK Pop Museum. But you go out to a small town where there's not a large foundation. Bartlesville would be an exception, probably Ponca City an exception to that. But you get out to a small town where you never had a large corporation or a concentrated wealth-created foundation, there is no money to raise for this.